Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Just Add Misplay, and today I want to go over my Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck. I've had some people reach out on my channel. My decks are more of a casual build, but I do have competitive decks, so that's what I'm bringing to you today. This is one of my most powerful EDH decks, Scion of the Ur-Dragon. It is wubrg. It does things with dragons, and this deck, I gotta say, outside of like the CEDH format, I would rank this deck a 9 or even a 10, maybe just 9.5, just because it is a little bit slower than most decks. But again, that's on a scale where it's not being compared to CEDH deck list. If you're watching this video, you probably have an idea of what Scion of the Ur-Dragon does. So you pay 2 mana, search your library for a dragon card, and put it into your graveyard. And then when you do that, Scion becomes a copy of that dragon until end of turn. It's really cool. It's a crazy, powerful ability. Most of the dragons in this deck have like not enter the battlefield effects because that doesn't really work with Scion's ability. And it's 5 colors, so there's so many options we can do. Now, this build right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, is very creature heavy. I did that because I built this deck way back in 2010 is when I started this build. That's when Lurking Predators came out. Actually, it might have been 2009. Anyway, this card in EDH is crazy insane. It is so worth the build around. The way this deck has performed for me is incredible. So, Lurking Predators, if you don't know, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you reveal the top card of your library, and if it's a creature, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, you can put it on the bottom. There's 4 players at the table, okay? There's going to be spells getting cast, and you're going to be hitting creatures. With Lurking Predators in my deck, I am constantly hitting creatures because of the way that I built this deck. And a lot of the dragons in this deck, if not all the dragons in this deck, have abilities that make it so you don't need to play certain sorceries or instant spells or even artifacts to try to do certain things in this deck, because the dragons will have the abilities. And it's just really great. This is the only deck I've built around to have Lurking Predators and the synergy, and it's done so many great things. Let's go to the next spell. Up next, we have Sunbird's Invocation. This is the second enchantment in the deck. This card's a lot of fun. So when you get it on the battlefield, right, whenever you cast a spell from your hand, you reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the converted mana cost, and then you can put a spell revealed this way that has the same mana cost or less, and you get to cast it without paying its mana cost. So it's a 6 cost enchantment that does nothing, as the kids say, but if it sticks around for a turn, it's crazy. It's insane. And I actually run this in a lot of decks just because it's so fun and it really does a lot of shenanigans. Up next, this might be the third and final enchantment of the deck. I got this card from a dear friend, Wyatt. Thank you so much for trading me. I know it was hard for you to part with this card. You got good cards in return, and I just want to say thank you. Defense of the Heart. So this is an enchantment that costs 4, and during your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, you sacrifice it, and then you search your library for 2 creature cards, put those cards into play, and then shuffle your library afterward. Again, there's 4 players at the table, so someone's going to have 3 or more creatures at some point. And this card really just puts you so far ahead of the game. Okay, I lied. There was one more enchantment. Dragon Tempest. It costs 2, right? 1 in a red for whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield, it gains haste. So all your dragons, guess what? They have flying. Guess what? They're going to get haste. Okay, and then on top of that, that's right, there's more people. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. It's so good. This card alone has single-handedly won me games. right from the get-go. Drop it on turn 2 and it just does so many great things for you. You need to run it. And okay, so there's 5, and I'm just not even gonna say if there's more or not, but I'm pretty sure this is the last one. Mirrorwing Wake. Creatures you control get +1/+1. That helps. It's not spectacular, but again, it does help for 5 mana. And then whenever you tap a land for mana, you double it, essentially. You get to add another mana. It's really good. It helps this deck catch up, because in the beginning of the game, you don't really have a lot of spells. You're just kind of setting up for a big turn, and then a whole bunch of big turns after that. So to help set up, these are some of the lower converted mana costs. Starting off with Lightning Greaves. You pay 2, and then you don't have to pay anything ever again. It'll give a creature haste, and it'll give them Shroud. So you can protect your commander. You can protect any big scary dragon you're going to put into play. So good. Run it. Up next, it costs 6. It's called Omen Machine. This card is probably a sleeper card. You may or may not have even heard of it. Okay, players can't draw cards. Oh, you think that's pretty bad, right? No. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player exiles the top card of their library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, the player can cast the spell without paying its mana cost. So it's a forced cast, so it has to be done. This card's really great because all your dragons cost a lot of mana, and there's a good chance your opponents aren't going to benefit from this as much as you are, because your whole deck is built around this card. Not just this card, but it works well with this card, I should say. Up next, Sensei's Divining Top. You all should know what it does. It helps filter the top 3 cards of your library, and you pretty much can't destroy it ever. And then we have a Soul Ring, of course. For Mana Ramp, speaking of Mana Ramp, that is it. That's all for non-creature spells, other than the Planeswalkers, which we're going to get to in a second. But you know what? Let's just do them now. All right. So our first Planeswalker is Xenagos, the Reveler. Xenagos has a +1 ability. Well, it costs 4, and has a +1 ability where you get to add mana equal to the number of creatures you control. The whole deck is built around creatures. There's turns where I get like 5 mana from him alone. Like, he's really good. And then you can pay 0 and put a blocker in case you feel threatened. Xenagos is good. Now, the rest of the Planeswalkers in this deck are themed around the fact that this is a Dragon Tribal EDH deck. So Sarkhan naturally is most of them. Sarkhan Dragon Soul costs 6. It starts off with 5 loyalty. +2, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature your opponents control. So that can kill a lot of mana dorks. All right, and it kills all of them, all your opponents. And then you +2 again, and you'll end up with 9, and then you can -9 and put any number of dragons from your deck directly onto the battlefield. He's crazy good. Sarkhan the Unbroken. +1, it draws you a card, and then you get to add 1 mana of any color, and then again, you can create a dragon with -2, and then -8, it does the same ability. Search your deck for any number of dragon cards. Really good. Sarkhan the Mad. Again, shout out to you, Wyatt. One of the first EDH games I played Sarkhan the Mad, and he actually criticized me. I was like, that card's so bad, why would you ever play it? And I had to teach that man a lesson. So I played Sarkhan the Mad. I hit -4, and I one-shotted him with my dragons. So, Wyatt, I'm sure you remember that moment. If you're watching, I apologize, but I also don't. You had to learn your place, okay? I love you, Wyatt. So, you want to play Sarkhan the Mad, and you're probably going to -4, or you -2. You don't really ever want to pay 0. That first ability is really not that great. Also, don't drop him until you have a bunch of dragons on the field, okay? You can one-shot people easily. Check it out, guys. Another Sarkhan. So it has 2 +1 abilities. One will get you 2 mana that you can only cast dragons with, which is no problem at all. The other one helps you discard a card and draw a card to kind of filter through your deck. You can also throw big mana cost dragons into your graveyard and bring them back out with some graveyard recursion, which we'll go over in just a few minutes. Check it out, another Sarkhan the Masterless. We're playing him because he's Sarkhan, and his first static ability right here, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, each dragon you control deals 1 damage to that creature. That trigger happens before their attack finishes. So as soon as they declare an attack, all your dragons just hit them with a fireball. It's really good. And you can +1 and turn your planeswalkers into 4/4 dragons. That's cool too. There are quite a bit of planeswalkers in the deck. And then you can -3 to create a dragon if you don't have any. And that dragon will trigger with the ability on top. So he's very good. Up next, we have 3 Nicobolas because he is the dragon god, right? So we have to put him into this EDH deck. Nicobolas, God Pharaoh, he does a lot of things here. We're playing him more for flavor, but if you can -12, essentially you win the game. It puts a big target on your back. Up next, we have Nicobolas, the dragon god. He is insane. He does a whole bunch of things. He essentially wins the game for you. You can cast him turn 5, no problem. And then we have Nicobolas, the original planeswalker, +3, destroy target non-creature permanent. I remember the first time I played this, there was actually another planeswalker on the field when I was playing, and I +3, and Nicobolas ate the other planeswalker. At least that's how I viewed it, and I still view it that way to this day. He's so good. Okay. It's a Dragon EDH. I had to add them, okay? Those cards are really good. They're a little mana intensive, especially the Nicobolases. So if you're going to take out any cards, it would probably be them just because they're so much higher converted mana costs, and also they don't synergize with the Lurking Predators we talked about earlier. They're more of my personal favorites, and they fit the theme here. Since we just talked about Nicobolas, we're going to talk about cards we're playing to punish your opponent. So essentially, when you use Scion the Ur-Dragon, when you play him, you always want to keep 2 mana open, so you can kind of protect Scion if it gets there. If someone tries to target and remove your Scion, you want to have a way to kind of defend them, okay? So remember, you pay 2 and it transforms into them. So if someone tries to target you with like a Path to Exile or whatever, you can pay 2 and then make it a copy of Mirrorwing Dragon. So if an opponent or any player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets Mirrorwing Dragon, that player copies the spell for each other creature that they control and that the spell could legally target. And then each copy targets a different one of those creatures. It's a little insane, right? So you can essentially board wipe their field depending on, what spell they're casting. If they're casting like a Swords to Plowshares is a good one. All those things. It'll just target their entire squad. Really good. The rest of these cards I put in the deck for the players that sit down at the table and they just want to win the game turn 5 no matter what it costs. Like, they can do something that is like an uncool thing to do. You know what I'm saying? That's why Numont's in here. Because blowing up lands is not cool. This is in the deck to help control the players that are getting out of control. I will never, unless it's like a super competitive game, I will never transform my Scion into Numot unless it needs to be done. Some people just need to be taught lessons, I'm telling you. So that's why it's in here. Up next, we have Nicobolas. Here's a trick with Nicobolas, okay? So you go to swing with Scion, right? They say no blocks because it's just a 4/4, right? You pay 2, you transform him into Nicobolas, and then whenever Nicobolas deals damage to an opponent, they discard their entire hand. Boom. You go through, they didn't block, so now they have to chuck their hand, and then you don't have to pay this upkeep because at the end of the turn, it's no longer Nicobolas, it's Scion. So the card's really good. It'll punish those players that are not being nice, and that's why it's in the deck. Up next, we have a 2-card combo right here. Okay? So again, these cards are in the deck to teach lessons. I don't ever play them and just try to win off the bat, although you could if you're that type of person. But these are literally just in the deck to control decks that are just off the charts with their power level, okay? So the combo here, Molten Steel Dragon, you can pay 1 red or 2 life and it gets +1/+0, okay? That's the first part of the combo. Second part of the combo is Dragon Tyrant. It has double strike. It's just a dragon with double strike. No big deal, right? So if you swing and you have 4 mana open, you can essentially pay 2, and then before that trigger resolves, pay 2 again. So after the first trigger resolves, okay, you want to target Molten Steel Dragon in your deck and throw it into your graveyard. And then once it becomes Molten Steel Dragon, the second trigger will try to resolve for the Dragon Tyrant transformation, right? But before that trigger goes off, you just pay 2 life, so no mana, pay 2 life and give it +1/+0 until end of turn. So you can literally pay however much life you want. So if you want to pay 20 life, go for it, right? Go crazy with it. You pay 20 life, it gets +1/+0 for each 2 life that you paid. So it gets essentially +10/+0. And then the second you finally stop paying the life, and then you let the second transformation resolve, and it transforms into Dragon Tyrant. So now it's a 6/6 with +10/+0, which makes it a 16 with double strike. You swing, and it has trample, and it has flying, and if they can't block that trample double strike damage, you win the game just right off the bat. A lot of times it's a 1-turn KO. I did it a few times, and then after you win that way so many times, you just kind of like, you pump the brakes, because it doesn't always become fun for the people you're using that against, unless they're that competitive. Again, that's why it's in the deck. I'm not mean, I swear. All right, let's talk about the small creatures, or essentially the ramp creatures of the deck. Up first, we have Elvish Piper. Pay 4, and then you can tap 1 green and tapper to put a creature card from your hand in play. Really good. Bloom Tender. Tap it for the color among permanents you control. Add 1 mana to your mana pool. Very good. Awesome 2-drop card. Courser of Crewfix. 2 green and 1. It will kind of filter your deck. At the top card of your deck is a land. You can play it from the top of your deck. And then every time you play a land, you gain 1 life. He's really good. Sylvan Carotid. It's good. 2-drop with Hexproof and Defender. Hexproof is the big deal here. That way they can't just like lightning bolt it or get rid of it. So it's a good turn 2 ramp spell. Feyboro Elder. This is essentially another Bloom Tender, but with Vigilance. And it's bigger. It's a really good card. Birds of Paradise. 1-drop in green. Tap it for any color. Very, very good card. And then we have Scuttlemutt and Ally Myr. They both cost 3. They're both creatures, so they synergize with Lurking Predators. And then they both, boop, tap for any color mana. All-Stars. They are secret All-Stars for the deck. So, let's go to these guys. These kind of like cheap mana cost as well. So if you transform Scion into this Ur-Dragon, which I guess would be his daddy, I don't know. Whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards and put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. That's insane, right? And it's a 10/10. Add it to the deck. Maelstrom Archangel. This card is so sweet. It's wubrg. So whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may play a non-land card from your hand without paying its mana cost. This card is so good. You're going to have big dragons in your hand. It's nice. It's a nice card. You can't transform into it, but that's fine. Joda the Archmage Eternal. So originally I had Fist of Suns, which is a 3 casting cost artifact that you can pay wubrg, and then you can cast spells with just paying wubrg instead of the full mana cost, right? Well, Joda is essentially a creature that does that. So because it synergizes with Lurking Predators, I took out the Gauntlet, even though it's very, very good in this deck, and I put in Joda because it's better synergizes. And just that little like 1% increase helps, trust me. Up next, we have our removal dragons, okay? So all these, well, most of these are dragons. They're all creatures though. Up first, we have Dragon Lord Dramoka. He can't be countered. Flying lifelink. Your opponents can't cast spells this turn. So that's good if you want to swing and hope they don't have spell like shenanigans. So you can transform Scion, or if you have 6 mana, you can just play it. It's a good card. Then we have Tyrants Familiar. So it has flying and haste, and as long as you control your commander, it gets +2/+2. And whenever it attacks, deals 7 damage to target creature defending player controls. Really good if there's a big creature in the way you got to get rid of. You can play this because it has haste, or you can transform Scion before you attack to get rid of that blocker that's giving you trouble. Silumgar the Drifting Death. This card's insane. So it has hexproof. So if someone's going to target your general, you can just pay 2 and give your general hexproof. Essentially, you just transform him into this guy. But even better, he also doubles as a removal. He can board wipe. It's a one-sided board wipe. For each dragon you control that attacks, defending players' creatures all get -1/-1 until end of turn. He's so good. He's an all-star. Very good for this deck. Another board wipe, a Balefire Dragon. You transform Scion into Balefire Dragon. Then if Scion gets through with an attack, it'll do 6 damage to them, and then the same amount of damage to all their creatures they control. It's really good. It's insane. Steel Hellkite. He's really good in this deck. He can board wipe tokens. So when he deals combat damage to a player, you may pay X and destroy each non-land permanent that player controls with that converted mana cost that you pay. So tokens cost 0. So if you pay 0, you can board wipe tokens or any other threat that's in your way, right? As long as it deals combat damage first. Siege Dragon is really good. It's a board wipe for those mana dorks that are a little bit beefier. Mana bears, maybe? I don't know. So whenever it attacks, if the defending player controls no walls, deals 2 damage to each creature without flying. There's a good chance they won't control walls. Drakasith, Maw of Flames. So it is a 7/7 flying dragon, of course. When it attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target, and then 3 damage to up to 2 other targets. He's really good. He helps clear the battlefield. Nicobolas, of course. So when he enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and then when you have 7 mana, you can exile him, and he becomes a Planeswalker. Nicobolas the Arisen. +2, draw 2 cards. -3, deal 10 damage to target creature or Planeswalker. -4, you can put a creature or Planeswalker from a graveyard onto the battlefield. And then -12, exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. He's really, really good. So up next, we have a new card from M21, Terror of the Peaks. So spells your opponents cast that target him cost an additional 3 life to cast. And then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equals to that creature's power to any target. Really, really good card. Hands down, this card is just so insane. It's so good. And guess what? Scourge of Valkyris literally does the same thing, except it's only when another dragon enters the battlefield under your control. All right? Those cards are crazy good. So up next, we have cards that create tokens. Starting off, we have Dragon Broodmother. Okay, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, you get a 1/1 red and green dragon with flying and devour 2. Each upkeep. So that you get 3 dragons before it's your turn, and then when it's your turn, you get another dragon. This card is crazy good. So insane. The more players at the table, the better that card gets. Laughless Dragon Queen. It costs 6. Whenever a non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create another 5/5 dragon creature token with flying. He's really good. Dragon Master Outcast. Beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, guess what? You're gonna put a 5/5 red dragon onto the battlefield. Utvara Hellkite. If you have enough dragons on the field, you can just transform your general into Utvara and then swing, and then you get twice as many dragons to swing with the next turn. This card is bonkers. Niv Mizzet Parun. He's really good. I like that he can't be countered. That mana cost really is not that hard to get. If one of your opponents is playing a spell-heavy deck, you're going to love the fact that this card's in your deck. You're going to draw cards and deal damage all day. Up next, we have Dragon Mage. When he deals combat damage to a player, each player can discard their hand and draw 7 cards. That's really good because you got graveyard manipulation. You can bring back essentially any creature from your graveyard. Zuralin of the Claw. It costs 5. You pay 2 red and 1 colorless. Search your library for a dragon. Put it into play as though it was just played. It gets haste, and then you exile it at the end of the turn. So it's kind of like a second commander. It's pretty good. Hellkite Charger. Flying haste. When it attacks, you can pay 7, and if you do, you untap all creatures. After this combat phase, there's additional combat phase. I haven't used this card very much, but there are times where I do have that extra 7 mana, and it's very helpful. Xenagos, God of Revels. He's really good. He's 6/5 indestructible, but I'm really just playing him to throw him on the battlefield and then give my creature +X/+X and haste right before combat start. It doubles their attack. It doubles their attack and defense. It's really good. Karthus, Tyrant of Jund, a flying haste 7/7 dragon. When he comes into play, you gain control of all dragons, and then you get to untap them. Then other dragons you control get haste. He is a game winner, game finisher. Speaking of which, we got another game finisher. Atarka World Render. He gives all your dragons double strike until end of turn. He's crazy good. Alternate win condition, Hellkite Tyrant. If you're playing an artifact deck, you just swing with him and win. It's really like, it might take the fun out of the game a little bit, but he's in there because, like I said, I don't just have casual decks. This is a play to win deck. And then Ojutai, Soul of Winter. It costs 7. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, you get to tap a non-land permanent an opponent controls, and it does not untap during the next untap step. I have transformed my general into Ojutai and just locked them out of the game. Ojutai is so good and so busted in this deck. Alright, so those are all like the Grand Slam winners. Last few cards here are Graveyard Recursions. We have Spark Double. I said in other videos, and I'll say it in this video, Spark Double is amazing. Put it in every blue deck. It gives you essentially a second commander and then some, or a second planeswalker you have on the field. He's really good. Add him. Body Double. Copy a creature in your graveyard for 5 mana. All your dragons probably cost more than 5. He's really sweet. Bladewing the Risen. I love Bladewing the Risen. He is my commander's sidekick. You play him. When he enters the battlefield, you get a dragon permanent from your graveyard into the battlefield with him. So he hits the battlefield and he brings something back from the graveyard. That's a dragon as well. He's so much fun to play, and I'm really happy to have him in the deck. He can also buff your dragons, give them +1/+1 until end of turn. You don't really do that, but it is there if you need to. Another card that is an all-star. I would maybe even a third. He's a lieutenant of the deck, perhaps. Teneb the Harvester. When Teneb deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 3. One of those has to be black. And if you do, put a creature card from a graveyard into play under your control. It can be any graveyard. And a lot of times what I do is I'll play Scion. I'll wait until the end. It'll go around. And then right before it's my turn, I'll have 2 mana open. I'll just pay 2 and throw something in the graveyard that I want. Like I'll throw I'll pay 2 and just throw Blade Wing the Resident into my graveyard. And then I'll start my turn. I have all this mana open, and I will swing with Scion. They'll say no blocks or they can't block, right? So I'll pay 2 and transform him into Teneb. Then Teneb gets thrown into my graveyard, right? Then it hits. And then I'll pay Teneb's ability because Scion is now a copy of Teneb, right? I'll pay that 3 once the damage goes through. I'll choose Bladewing the Risen as my target for Teneb's ability. And then when that enters the battlefield, I can give a creature in my graveyard to my battlefield with it, and I can choose Teneb. If you do that, you got to be careful though, because you'll have to sacrifice Scion, but Teneb next turn can bring it back, or you can just cast it from your command zone. But that's a pretty cool combo, and you don't have to target Teneb. You can choose like any dragon that's going to be in your graveyard, right? If you don't want to kill your general with that little synergy right there, there's so many ways you can play this deck. It's a lot of fun. All right, now we're going to go over the lands in our deck. We have 38 lands total. We're going to start off with the 5-color lands. Up first, we have Ancient Ziggurat. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, but you can only spend it on creature spells. The whole deck is creature spells, right? So that won't be hard to do. Exotic Orchard, it's essentially any mana you want. Command Tower, same deal. Forbidden Orchard, same deal as well. And then 2 Evolving Wilds to search for that land, and then Fable Passage because it's slightly better. Rupture Spire, and then the Guild, the Trans Guild will also tap. They'll fix your mana base. Mana Confluence fixes your mana base. Cavern of Souls makes it so that your dragons won't get countered. And then on top of that, you can tap it for any color mana if it's a dragon that you're casting. We have 5 Vivids, which tap that enter the battlefield with 2 charge counters. You can remove a charge counter and add 1 mana of any color. Those are really good lands as well. Flooded Grove is a filtered land. This card works. It's not super fantastic. I'm thinking of cutting it, but there are times where it is helpful. I like that it doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. Spire Garden enters the battlefield not tapped because you'll have 4 opponents. Yavimaya Hollow, you can pay 1 green and tap it to regenerate your commander or whatever, or you can just tap it for a colorless. This card's really good. It helps out. It's always nice to have a regeneration effect on board. This is an actual bad land. I only own 1 copy of the dual lands from back in the day, and as you can see, it's pretty beat up. It is what it is. I threw it in this deck because this deck deserves it. Up next, we have 3, 4, 5, 6 temples, okay? Temple of, I'll just say the guilds, right? Rakdos Temple, Golgari Temple, Selesnya Temple, Gruul Temple, Boros Temple, and Dimir Temple. And then we have the 5 basic lands, 1 of each, and they all got Bolas's horns. I did that just for, the sheer flavor and the lore behind the cards. And then we have tri-lands in the back. We have Savage Lands, Crumbling Necropolis, Frontier Bionovac, I don't know if I said that right, Nomad Outpost, Mystic Monastery, Seaside Citadel, and a Jungle Shrine. These are really good tri-lands, and they really help balance out the whole deck. So that's all I got for you. I hope you guys liked the video. I hope this was a more competitive side that you guys wanted to see. I'm more of a casual player. That's just my play style. That's how I have fun. You guys have fun however you want to. If you want to play casual, if you want to play competitive, if you want to do CEDH, if you want to flip a dragon on the table and call it a day. Thanks for watching. And your opponents can't cast this Bladewing the I love Bladewing the Hey, thanks for watching. If you like my content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Also, if you could hit the thumbs up, it really goes a long way and it helps out a lot. You can find me on Twitch at JustAddMissPlay. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you in the next video.